Hi folks, Nathan Pierce here with Family Protection Ministries. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of California. We're going to be talking a little bit about stewardship of children and how did God create that structure of stewardship. And we'll be talking a little bit more about Homeschool Freedom Day coming right up. Welcome to the Front Line with FPM, where we talk about California politics, homeschool freedom, parental rights, and the family. I'm your host, Nathan Pierce, and thanks for joining us today. Let's jump right in and see what's going on here on the Front Line. So I want to talk a little bit about the way that God designed the family, and Scripture consistently affirms the obligation of parents to be teaching their children, to bring them up in the ways of God. And I've talked about this before on this podcast, but I just wanted to remind us this morning that God gave children as a heritage to parents. In Psalm 127, verses 3 through 5, he says, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate." So this is very clear that parents are the ones that God has given children to, not the state. God gave children to parents as stewards of these children. He did not give children to the authority of the state. He did not give children to be wards of the state or the community or the city or the town. It isn't that God gave children to be raised by a village. He gave children to be raised by parents. And it's very clear throughout Scripture that parents not only have a right to raise their children the way that God has given them instruction to do so, but he's given them the responsibility to do that. And he did not give that responsibility to the state. He did not tell the government that the government's role is to raise children to benefit the state or for the good of the many or anything like that. He gave the responsibility of raising children to the parents that God gave those children to. And so as we think about children and whose responsibility are they anyway, we need to remember that God gave children and entrusted them to parents, to the family. He created the family. He designed the family way back in Genesis. And we can look in Scripture and find all the ways that God has laid out family and relationships and built that structure of family government, and given the authority and the responsibility to parents to raise these children. And so that's what we're here to protect here at Family Protection Ministries. And I would encourage you to pray today for a sort of a renewed mind in sort of overriding the mindset that the world around us has, that parents are not authorized to make decisions for their children, and that they have to get permission from the state to do anything. But rather, God has not only authorized but commanded parents to make decisions for their children. And that's something that we need to constantly remind ourselves and preach to ourselves. That is truth. That is from God. That is God's design for the family, and God will bless that. All right. Now we're going to get into some other issues. I want to talk a little bit about the history of this California state superintendents that we have had over the last few years. And this is really important because there has been a huge impact by the superintendents of California's school systems. And we're going to get into that a little bit today. We're going to start with a history of some superintendents that have perhaps been a little bit more challenging for private homeschooling, for Christian education, and we'll get into some that have not been that have been easier to work with, some that have been more supportive of private homeschooling, parents making decisions for their kids, and then finally the election that is going to be coming in the near future related to this same office. And I just want you all to be aware, but we're going to go through some history of that first. Just the other day, it was announced by Anthony Rendon's press office. He is the former Speaker of the California State Assembly and has previously authored legislation here in California on the topic of early childhood education and mandatory kindergarten. His idea was to expand further the state's oversight of children's instruction, upbringing, and the state's control over children at a younger age than is currently the case in California. So Anthony Rendon, not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, is running for superintendent of public instruction. That was his announcement earlier this week, and so it made me kind of take my own trip back into history, thinking through this topic of what is the role of the California Superintendent of Public Instruction. What issues have we faced in the past? I'm trying to sort of give you a brief history of this because it's important to know the impact that this office, this statewide elected office, can have on homeschool freedom and your family. So we have to take a look back to some issues back in 2008. We have to take a look back even further to some issues back in 2002 even. And so one of the issues that I want to bring up has to do with some things that happened back in 2002, which was during the tenure of Mrs. Delaine Easton, who had been in the legislature and then was in the position of Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of California. She held that position for 8 years, which is the maximum allowed time. She could not run for a third term, and so therefore she was stuck. She had to leave office at that time. And right before she left that office, she sent a letter. Well, throughout her time as Superintendent of Public Instruction, there were all kinds of problems for homeschoolers that sort of came from her office in some way or another, in various policies set by the Department of Education, in various instructions that the Department of Education under Delaine Easton pushed out in sort of ideas of the state has control over homeschooling. Even if it's not in the law, you need to, as public school officials should pursue homeschoolers and make sure that they are in submission to local school districts. In some cases, local school districts, following that same idea, actually pursued homeschoolers throughout the state of California in specific areas. Some school officials actually took that so far as to tell local homeschool families, you have to submit your curriculum to us for approval. This was back in the 1990s. And so with the end of her time in office as the head of the Department of Education in California, Delaine Easton sent a letter to the California State Legislature. She sent copies of this letter. It was addressed to every legislator in the state of California, and their offices all received this letter from Delaine Easton. And the letter, I should be able to link to the letter so you can read the letter for yourself. But the letter essentially said, there's a problem in our education system. There's a loophole, and parents have found this loophole. It's called homeschooling, and parents are doing this, and you need to fix this hole. You need to force people back into the system in some way, shape, or form. And so that was Delaine Easton's issue. That was her response to this homeschool idea. In fact, the way that it was framed by James Mason. Jim Mason is the head of HSLDA. He's the president of HSLDA today. But he wrote this article I believe it's published in their book on Homeschool Freedom. And it's in a paragraph that's titled Delaine Easton's Goodbye Gift. I just want to read a little bit of this to you to give you a little bit of the history here of how much of an impact somebody in this position can have. Jim Mason writes, In 2002, due to term limits, Delaine Easton could not run for a third term as Superintendent of Public Instruction. As a parting gift to homeschoolers, though, she wrote a letter to every assemblyperson and senator urging them to do something about the horrible crisis in California of thousands of parents teaching their own children at home, especially because the vast majority of them were not, gasp, certified teachers. Oh, the humanity! Delaine Easton included with her letter a tedious legal brief written by her general counsel, Carolyn Perillo. It recounted the history of the private school statute from its inception through 2002. It featured heavy doses of Turner and concluded homeschooling under the private school statute had never been legal. I call her legal brief tedious because I thought it was really well done. I hate it when they do that. It appeared to leave no stone unturned, but I was new to the California wars and was playing catch up. When Mike Smith asked me to help him write a response, I said a quick prayer asking the Lord to send me a lifeline because, as I told the Lord, I got nothing. So this is an excerpt from a long article about this particular homeschool battle in 2002, and I would encourage you to read that in their book, but it's also on their website. I'll link to this story in the notes below. But if you think about that, this set off in 2002 sort of a panic because there were homeschoolers all over the state of California that knew this letter had gone out. It was very public. And there was widespread concern over what was going to happen next. Family Protection Ministries certainly, along with HSLDA, were very concerned that this would spark a response from the California State Legislature, which ultimately it did not, though we engaged in quite a bit of effort to try to keep that from happening. We did write a response. We did deliver a response. And interestingly, this happened just months before I started here at Family Protection Ministries as an employee. It was just following my first internship as a summer intern. But this issue was a huge concern to homeschool families back in 2002, and ultimately it didn't lead to actual legislation or banning on homeschooling, but it was because of the hard work of many people, including HSLDA, FPM, and CHIA of California, together with homeschool leaders and homeschool families across the state of California that all got involved in trying to present a positive response to California state legislators, to the media, because the media was on top of it as well. And further, homeschool families got involved in helping to provide a message to their legislators that we are legitimately homeschooling, we are providing a good education to our children, and homeschooling should stay legal and as free as it is right now. And so many families visited their legislator's district office in addition to the Capitol office. In fact, I believe that was one of the best years of involvement in our district office visit program, where we had homeschool families from around the state of California visiting district offices, and every single legislator's district office was visited in addition to their Capitol office, which is really important. And you can learn more about that on our website under advocacy, where you can learn how you can also be an advocate for private homeschooling and visit a local legislator's district office. I wanted to also point out that the issue of the superintendent having impact doesn't end there. The next superintendent, which many were concerned would be similar to Miss Delaine Easton in his political perspective, there was actually a gentleman named Jack O'Connell who came in after her. He had also been in the legislature, and there is a message that he gave in 2008 after homeschooling was judged by a 3-judge panel in an appellate court in Southern California to be deemed deemed illegal unless the parents were certified teachers. They made this ruling, and eventually they reversed their ruling, but that took several months for them to do that. So this ruling actually came down in February 28th of 2008. And through that spring and summer, people were concerned about how this was going to impact homeschool freedom. It was not reversed until August 8th of 2008, when we got the Jonathan L. decision that was ultimately issued by the same 3 judges in the same court when they reheard their own case, changed their minds. And that's an incredible story as well. But during that process, there were a number of people that came out in favor and in support of private homeschooling and the right of parents to choose that option. I'm going to read to you the statements from a couple of people at that time, including the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jack O'Connell. This is from Jack O'Connell, March 11th, 2008. This is while everything was sort of up in the air. We didn't know what was going to happen with this court decision in 2008. Jack O'Connell, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, wrote the following statement. He said, "I have reviewed this case, and I want to assure parents that choose to homeschool that California Department of Education policy will not change in any way as a result of this ruling. Parents still have the right to homeschool in our state. Every child in our state has a legal right to get an education, and I want every child to get an education that will prepare them for success in college and the world of work in the challenging global economy. As the head of California's public school system, I hope that every parent would want to send their children to public school. However, traditional public schools may not be the best fit for every student. Within the public school system, there are a range of options available. Students can take independent study classes, attend a charter school, or participate in non-classroom-based programs. But some parents choose to send their children to private schools or to homeschool, and I respect that right. I admire the dedication of parents who commit to oversee their children's education through homeschooling. But no matter what educational program a student participates in, it is critical that the program prepares them for future success in the global economy. I urge any parent who is considering or involved in homeschooling their children to take advantage of resources and support available through their county or district offices of education." End quote. This was the entirety of his statement back in 2008, Superintendent Jack O'Connell. So this is a very, very positive response to a concern about the legality of homeschooling in California. This was from the California Department of Education Superintendent of Public Instruction. And so you can see the night and day difference between Delaine Easton's perspective on homeschooling, concern about not having credentialed teachers overseeing all of the children's education. And then, on the other hand, you have Jack O'Connell's statement about how every parent has the right to choose what's best for their child. Now, this can all change depending on who's elected to office. So next, we have an election coming up that's going to be determining who's going to be the next superintendent of public instruction. And so as the candidates are being announced for who's going to be running for that position, we need to be very careful and be very engaged in how people get elected to that office, and make sure that we do not be silent on who gets elected, and make sure that we do not elect somebody to that office that is going to try to undermine parents' authority to educate their own children, and to undermine the legal right to homeschool in the state of California. So hopefully that's of help to you, that history, and I hope it encourages you in the importance of voting, and the importance of specifically looking at the statewide offices, because those are very important. Just as local offices are important, and legislative offices are important, and the office of the president is important, so is the office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction of California. So please consider this. And also, hopefully, you'll be joining with us in La Mesa on August 23rd for our Homeschool Freedom Day, where we will be talking about the importance of engaging in homeschool advocacy. We will be talking about how you can engage and be involved in that, and how many times throughout history, God has used homeschool families and individuals to make a difference for homeschool freedom. So I've been talking about Homeschool Freedom Day coming up on August 23rd in La Mesa, California, and I would love to see you there. It's going to be an incredible, inspirational event that people will be trained in advocacy, but also inspired to get involved by speakers that really care about homeschool freedom and have been on the front lines fighting for homeschool freedom, both here in California and across the country. We will have Mr. Darren Jones, who is an attorney with Homeschool Legal Defense Association and has been homeschooled himself and has been fighting for homeschool freedom for decades. And so he's going to be speaking there, and to give you sort of an idea of his perspective on why it's important for you to attend Homeschool Freedom Day, I have a recording that I'm sharing with you some of his own words, why you need to get involved in homeschool freedom. So here's Darren.
You know that homeschooling is great, but did you know that homeschool freedom is not automatic? Homeschoolers have had to fight for their freedom for decades, and that struggle continues today. Hi, I'm Darren Jones, Senior Counsel with Homeschool Legal Defense Association. On Saturday, August 23rd, Family Protection Ministries and the Christian Home Educators Association of California are hosting a special Homeschool Freedom Day. You'll get updates on legislative issues, you'll hear inspiring speakers, you'll get training to build relationships with legislators. I will be there sharing about past battles for homeschool freedom and talking about current challenges and how you can help. Plus there's lunch, because food makes everything better. I really hope to see you there. Don't miss this chance. You can connect with other homeschool families and find out best how to protect your freedom to homeschool. Are you a homeschool leader in the San Diego area? You won't want to miss this. Hi, I'm Darren Jones, Director of Group Services and Senior Counsel at Homeschool Legal Defense Association. On Friday, August 22nd, the Christian Home Educators Association of California is hosting a special leadership event just for you. You'll get practical tools, inspiration, and updates from leaders like Angela Lash, Dr. Andrade, and Nathan Pierce. I will also be sharing about the latest challenges to homeschool freedom around the country and what you can do about them. Plus, there's a catered dinner, because good food makes everything better. I hope to see you there. Don't miss this chance to connect with other group leaders, hear from experts, and learn how to lead your group with confidence.
So that's just a little bit of why you should want to come to Homeschool Freedom Day, because Darren's going to be there talking about some really important topics of the importance of your advocacy on behalf of homeschool freedom. We can't do it alone. We need everybody to be part of that battle. And so come to Homeschool Freedom Day, August 23rd, and be part of the team, the group, the movement fighting to protect homeschool freedom for today's generation and for generations to come. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Front Line with FPM. For more information about the topics we discuss here, check out Family Protection Ministries at fpmca.org and subscribe to our channel.